Hundreds of statues line the rooftops and colonnades of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. They are saints. A silent, watchful presence looking down on the Vatican tourists below. They seem larger than life, more than human. But these slowly decaying figures are not just religious symbols. They are actually real-life stories, encased in stone. There are two basic qualifications for sainthood. You have to be a martyr and literally die for the faith, or you must demonstrate extraordinary virtue and holiness during your lifetime. Right now, the Church is considering hundreds of people for sainthood who fit those qualifications. They come from every walk of life. Archbishop Oscar Romero was assassinated by political terrorists in El Salvador 10 years ago and is still mourned by millions today. He is a candidate for sainthood. So is Dorothy Day, who created the Catholic Workers Movement, which runs hundreds of homeless shelters and soup kitchens throughout America. She was demonstrating against war back in the 1940s. She also had an abortion and a child out of wedlock before converting to Catholicism. Then there's Catherine Drexel, daughter of one of the oldest and richest families in America. In 1891, she became a nun and spent all of her $20 million inheritance helping impoverished American Indians and blacks. And finally, Pierre Tucson, an 18th century slave who became a successful New York hairdresser, then devoted his life and his money to the poor. These people are some of the so-called saint makers. They help decide who makes it to sainthood. They work in a special department of the Vatican called the Congregation for the Causes of Saints. The congregation includes more experts in theology, history, and medicine from all over the world. They are periodically called in to study the lives of sainthood candidates and the times in which they lived. Saint makers don't work on a set schedule. They have no deadline to meet. Since the Congregation for the Causes of Saints was formed in 1588, approximately 300 people have been made into saints. The process always takes years to complete. In fact, one of the longest and most difficult cases was that of Joan of Arc. Church officials argued back and forth for centuries before making her Saint Joan in 1920. But before a candidate even comes to the attention of the saint makers, that person's holiness and virtue must first be documented beyond any doubt. Secondly, the candidate must have caused a miracle to happen. Our story is a journey through this saint-making process. We'll follow the cases of Catherine Drexel, who's near the end, and Pierre Tucson, who's just begun.
We know from the records, as far as we can discern, that Pierre Tucson was an extraordinarily holy and good and decent man who...
Last month, the Archdiocese of New York took one of the first steps in Pierre Tucson's canonization process. His body was exhumed. Forensic specialists were called in to identify and examine his remains so they could be moved to a more prominent crypt beneath the altar at St. Patrick's Cathedral. But Tucson's reputation for holiness must still be proven to the Vatican's satisfaction. Monsignor Michael Wren is gathering documentary evidence to do just that. Is much further along in the Church's system of saint-making. Her reputation for holiness has been well established by Monsignor James McGrath, a parish priest in suburban Philadelphia, who has spent 13 years studying her life. He is still struck by how seriously she took her vow of personal poverty, in spite of her $20 million inheritance.
She was very conscious of spending any money that would be on for her. And one time she needed a shoelace because she broke her shoelace. And rather than ask, she took and she sewed the shoelace together.
Now, McGrath is on the second and toughest phase of his work for Catherine Drexel's cause. He's searching for a miracle. Most of the events that the Vatican accepts as miracles are medical cases in which there's a sudden cure that is complete, permanent, and scientifically unexplainable. Furthermore, the cure must have taken place after someone prays to the sainthood candidate, asking for help.
Yes, I'm Monsignor McGrath from Philadelphia.
This search for a miracle brought McGrath to Tampa, Florida, tracking down what looks like a promising lead. An astonishing recovery of a 73-year-old man, Willard Blome, who suffered a massive abdominal aneurysm last year. Dr. Larry Thomas performed the emergency surgery.
And he arrived here with a blood pressure of about 50. And in the operating room, it's a little bit of a problem, because a 73-year-old with a blood pressure of 50, and that's not like a 19-year-old with a gunshot wound, and they can handle that. 70-year-olds don't handle it usually very well.
What would you like? We have coffee, tea?
The day she found her husband lying motionless on the floor is etched in Mary Blome's memory. She drove him to the closest hospital. It wasn't equipped to treat him, so he had to be rushed to another hospital a half hour away. In her desperation, she remembered an old friend's stories about Catherine Drexel.
I got in the car with my sister, and we started trying to follow the ambulance. And I, of course, was crying and praying. And I thought of, we had heard about this Mary Catherine Drexel. So I said, boy, I said, this is one for Mary Catherine Drexel. Mary Catherine, come on, we need you. Oh, help us, help us.
And you look on his recovery as, let's say, using percentage, would you say 90, 95% recovery?
I'd say more like 99%.
99%?
Yeah.
While Mary Blome is certain that Catherine Drexel orchestrated her husband's recovery, Willard Blome, who is a Lutheran, isn't so sure about this idea of saints or miracles.
Honestly, I believe in Jesus and Christ. I mean, I pray to him myself every night according to my beliefs. But, I mean, as far as all these saints are concerned, I really don't know. While I was in a nursing home, we've had everybody praying to Mary Catherine Drexel. And, this is what did it. And, all right, thank you very much. I'll go on. Nice to be here.
Who cares how it happened, right?
Yeah, nice to be here.
Although McGrath will keep investigating Willard Blome's recovery, he doesn't know if the Vatican will accept it as a miracle. But that's really not his problem.